Hello. We got it.
Hello. How are you?
I'm
Oh gosh,
so good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's so good to see you again. How's your day been?
It's good. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are so excited you are here. It is rainy in Los Angeles here today.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, we're going to give people something to do to entertain them on their rainy day.
I
Well,
love it.
while everyone is joining, I'll give a quick intro to myself and then yourself. You're obviously more interesting than me, but let's get started. So my name is Dr. Renee Thomas. I am a triple board certified physician in family medicine, public health and general preventive medicine, and lifestyle medicine. I am a lifestyle medicine intensivist and, of course, a life force physician. So let me now introduce our my fabulous co-host for today, Sierra Nielsen. So today I will be joined with Sierra Nielsen. She's a certified personal trainer, sports nutritionist, and meditation specialist, as well as the founder of the fantastic Strong by Sierra. It is a fitness, nutrition, and mindset program to help you become your healthiest, strongest, and most confident self. And who doesn't want that? Sierra has an impressive online following with hundreds of thousands of individuals who tune into her message on emotional resilience, body positivity, inner confidence, and of course, personal empowerment. As a popular performance and transformational coach, she has been featured in national media, including USA Today, Variety, and Self Magazine, and has worked with pretty much anyone from DC politicians, our Hollywood models, actors and actresses, to award-winning producers and New York Times best-selling authors. What a CV! She now spends she now spends her time working with women and speaking across the country, sharing her message on cultivating self-worth through embracing what makes you different, which is really cool. Tuning out that voice of comparison that we probably all can relate to, and using the psychology of self-esteem and the science of personal health to help women overcome feelings of inadequacy so they can live their most beautiful lives physically, mentally, and spiritually. Gosh, I love that.
Wow.
What a bio.
That was an intro. Thank you.
You deserve all of it.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
couple of quick things before we dive in. Feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat down below. We will have a bit of time for a Q&A. And the biggest part before we dive in, if you are interested at any time in learning more about your hormone levels, potential nutrient deficiencies, or just to get a head start on being proactive with your health, we have our biggest sale of the year starting today. It's going to be 54% off the Life Force Diagnostic for Black Friday. That will save you $300 off our regular price. You can head over to mylifeforce.com/live to learn more. We're also going to have the link in our bio and Sierra's bio. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at Go Life Force. So thank you so much for joining us. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm excited for this. I've been looking forward to it. So, for everyone joining me, who else is surprised that it is nearly Thanksgiving? What happened to this year?
I cannot believe it.
October. I feel like I blinked. October was like, hi, bye, we're done.
I also feel like this is just a part of getting older now. I'm always like, I can't believe it's so-and-so.
No, I refuse to admit that it's a part of getting older.
I know.
It's a big one. But anyway, this time of year can be super exciting, but it can also bring a lot of stress, less sunlight, unless you're on the other hemisphere, of course. And there's a lot of factors that come up at this time of year that can really interrupt our mental and physical health. So we're going to talk through a lot of this. Really, myself and Sierra are really committed to prioritizing these things, both in our personal and professional lives. And Sierra focuses on those from a health and fitness coaching perspective, as well as being a Life Force member herself. So Sierra, this is obviously not our first time chatting. Yeah. It's obviously wonderful to be here with you. I looked up and you joined Life Force in December of 2022. I also did not think we had been working together for that long.
Yeah.
But why did you, as someone who seemingly has it figured all out, why did someone like yourself decide to join Life Force?
Yeah, so I've been dabbling a little bit in functional medicine for a few years. And I actually found Life Force because I was looking for a really easy, more affordable way for clients and people in my community to also be able to experience functional medicine, because it's still relatively a new concept. But the reason I got into it in the first place is because I just felt like I was working with so many regular doctors who weren't listening to me. I just knew intuitively that there was something that wasn't quite right with my health. And I just kept getting all the usual tests done, and them telling me that, you're fine, like your tests are normal, or they weren't running the test I realized that maybe I needed. So it like just been a game changer for me. So when I found Life Force, it was, not only I was just like, they come to your house. And that's one of the biggest problems I found with even myself and clients, is the work that you had to go through to do all the tests and get everything done. It just felt like there were so many more things standing in our way from getting those results. So Life Force just made it super easy, and it was affordable. And yeah, since working with you, you've been one of the few people that actually listens to me, that understands that, like, oh, you know what, this maybe is an issue, or yes, you are in a normal range, but like, what is normal anymore, and like, especially for women and hormones, and we'll get into that, but it has just been such a game changer for me, because we're focusing on, like, how do I get myself to an optimal level? And what are the things that I can supplement, and being able to work with Life Force and get tested every 3 months, we can now see what's working and what's not, versus just having it be a guessing game and like throwing things at the wall, So, it has been such a life changer, honestly. I'm 38 years old, and it's taken me this long to find the answers. So.
Gosh, it's so wonderful to hear it. And I've seen a couple of your testimonial videos, and it just makes us feel so good inside to know that you are just living, I know you've said this to me before, like, you just feel so different to when we first started working together. It's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Is there anything else about that journey together that you want to share, or that would be helpful for other people to know that are maybe, on the fence of, do I want to work with Life Force or not?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer, because Life Force makes it so easy by coming to your house and doing the tests. And the telehealth doctor visits are virtual, but the tests that the Life Force are running are not usual tests that your GP will run. They're very extensive. They're looking at different biomarkers that a regular GP will not. They dive deep into hormones, which for me was a huge one. I had been working on coming off birth control, and I had every doctor in the world telling me that my birth control, it didn't matter. It absolutely changed everything for me. And then we've been working together on getting my hormones to a better place, more balanced, more optimal. Not only did I lose body fat, I've built muscle. My energy is completely different. My libido, my hair, my skin. So it's, to me, that has been, and that's what I was struggling with for years. It was like, I think people have just gotten to a point where we feel like, oh, this is just normal how we feel. We're all tired. We're all fatigued. We all don't have energy. We're all struggling with, like, if you're on a fat loss journey, but it doesn't have to be that difficult. And I think that this is the missing piece that this is the piece that everyone's been missing. It's like getting that very personalized, individualized testing to see what's going to work best for you, because you can follow all the advice you want online, and you will probably end up still frustrated because it's not what's individually going to work for you. And the only way to figure that out is if you're testing.
Absolutely. There's a big part of stop guessing, start testing, and then we can come up with an action plan that's really proactive and personalized for you. So, wow, it sounds like a lot of changes since you first started working with us. That's amazing. So happy for you.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone listening has had any of those concerns or issues, or you feel like you're just not being listened to. Let us know. Share your story. We love hearing those things. The number one thing that I always say is, like, you have to be your own health advocate. Listen to yourself. Find the people that will listen to you and will help you dive further.
Yeah, and I think it's great that we get a lot more time to spend with our members rather than a kind of traditional medical visit. That really helps to listen. You're not thinking, I need to get someone out the door. Like, I actually have the time to listen, to hear what you're saying, what are your goals, how are you feeling, and then figure out together, how can we get you to feeling your absolute best?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Shall we dive into our first topic, which today is stress?
That's a big one. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, I mean, kind of going back to like what we were just saying, I mean, obviously you have been such a pivotal part in helping me manage my stress and especially hormones. And this is a conversation that people have all the time. And I think they immediately always think of, when they think of stress and they think of hormones, they just think of cortisol. Can you talk a little bit about, especially during this time of the year as stress ramps up, like what are the main stress hormones and how do they impact us and how can we kind of navigate them throughout the season?
Absolutely. And stress as a medical concept can get really complicated really fast. So I'll try and do my best to give a good overview, but you're right. Let's start with what is stress. So we kind of are familiar with it. We hear the word, we kind of know what it means, but most of us think about stress as psychological pain. That's a very common definition for stress. Also, we might be familiar with like physical or physiological stress, so something like exercise or illness. There's a lot of other subdivisions that are definitely another conversation, but I don't want to forget things like psychosocial stress, environmental stress, pathological stress. But I think we should probably focus on the main one, which is probably mental or psychological stress this time of year, and how that can then create physical stress in the realm of hormones. So some stress can be good, right? Exercise, physical performance, it can sometimes be helpful, but it's that excessive amount, that recurrent amount of stress that can really start to increase your risk for acute and chronic illnesses. And there's a whole host. I can list a couple, but there's probably 50 more. But things like high blood pressure, we see more insulin resistance and diabetes, fertility and sex drive and sexual hormones, cardiovascular disease, inflammation, cognitive and memory problems, of course, mental health struggles, weight gain is common, digestive distress, thyroid problems, insomnia, hormone balance being a big one, and that list just goes on and on. And so the interesting thing about stress is this can actually happen even if stress is small. A lot of people say, oh, I don't have it as bad as others, but really big or small, it's not a comparison game. Even just anticipated stress or perceived stress can have a significant impact on your health. So then what happens when we're stressed? Well, the first thing is, a major part of it, we have our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and our sympathetic nerve system, and that tends to get activated. So that then starts to release our hormones from the adrenal gland. So cortisol is one of them. We also have epinephrine or adrenaline and noradrenaline or norepinephrine, and that works to it creates a lot of things in the body, but we're thinking main things like energy will increase, so does muscle tension, heart rate, blood pressure, and focus. Slows down our digestive system. It gets us in that fight or flight. The problem is we don't need to be in fight or flight all the time. We're not running away from lions. We might just be going to Christmas dinner with the family, but the feeling is the same internally. So then the HPA axis under stress, it leads to a couple of other releases, things like vasopressin, corticotropin releasing hormone. That can then lead to our adrenocorticotropin hormone and the release of other steroid hormones like glucocorticoids, the regulation of cortisol, and then androgen production. And growth hormone can also be released under times of stress. Thyroid hormone can be altered and sex hormones can be altered. So that's a big key player that we're thinking about. The other part of the autonomic nervous system is our parasympathetic nervous system, which when everything is working perfectly, that functions to return us to homeostasis after stress. The problem is that doesn't always happen. That regulates hormones such as acetylcholine and oxytocin. So when the stress becomes recurrent or prolonged, sometimes these hormones can start to deplete. We start to feel really tired, run down, prone to illness. We start to see shifts in things like mood, anxiety, depression. We're more irritable, we're lashing out. That then can start to impact our levels of hormones like serotonin, dopamine, tryptophan. They're usually our feel-good, relaxed hormones. And so we can start to feel more and more stressed. You can see this all starts to compound, right? And so as I said, it can get complicated pretty fast, but I think focusing on how do we bring down that stress response and not let it become repetitive and excessive is really going to be a good first step for most people.
Yeah, so that's obviously a ton of information, and for some people that are listening that don't know all the technical terms, I think one of the things that I've realized with a lot of clients anyways is that we've all kind of acclimated to this new level of stress that we don't even realize we're experiencing. Most people don't realize. They're like, oh, I'm fine, I'm not that stressed. But there is so much chaos happening in our lives, like even just with your work, with your family, but now we're being inundated with massive amounts of information every day, social media, just even being on our phone all day, so much stress. So I think the most important thing is, pay attention to, like you said, if you're feeling a little bit irritable, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling all these things, maybe there is an underlying stress issue that you don't even realize is happening. I have so many parents that are operating at such a crazy level that they're like, this is just how my life is now, which is why I think it's so important to take that proactive step, even if you feel like you aren't super stressed because you're just used to it, is finding those things that will kind of regulate that nervous system. So for you, what do you think are the most important things, or things that you've seen that really help people get into that state and help regulate that nervous system?
Absolutely. And I think stress, like most of our health, really does need a personalized approach. And I
Yeah.
find that because, you hear common tips like maybe you should walk outside. Well, maybe it's snowing and you don't really want to.
Yeah.
Maybe you should meditate. But for a lot of people, that makes them a little bit more stressed because they're thinking about the fact that they can't switch off. There's a lot of things where I think a personal approach is going to be number one. But I think that we can at least, if you're like, well, I don't even know where to start, right? My stress is through the roof. What can I do? And I take it back, like most health, to those foundational pillars, right? Getting sufficient quality sleep, eating at least predominantly health promoting nutrition, getting regular physical activity and exercise, having some level of stress management practices, and not indulging in things that we know are not particularly helpful. And I know we're going to touch on this later, but that nighttime eating that probably isn't in your best interest, excess alcohol, and things that we sometimes turn to that we know are not really benefiting our stress, but feel good in the moment.
Mhm.
Outside of that, I think finding your targeted activities. Like I often talk to people about just taking a deep breath. But one of the things that's helpful is finding something that you enjoy or is pleasurable, because a lot of stress response, humans are designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So something has to be pleasurable to help with that stress response. Remember, we're talking about all the pleasurable hormones being depleted. And so it can be anything. Maybe it's music, maybe it's a comedy show, physical intimacy, chatting with your friends, some mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, deep breathing, getting out in nature. I love yoga,
Mhm.
stretching. I have a lot of times on the life force calls, I'll see a pet come across the screen, and they're great for
The
stress management too.
best.
Absolutely. I just think the key underlying thing is finding something that you enjoy and you want to do it, because there's no point having a stress management practice that feels like another stressor on top of your life already.
Yeah. I don't know anyone in the chat here if you figured out what is that activity for you, but
Mm-hmm.
100%, I feel like immediately if I present like meditation or journaling to people, that doesn't work for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and that's totally fine. You don't need to do those things to de-stress. It is like, my dog is incredible spending time with him, but again, I think it's really important for everybody to step away from tech for a little bit.
Yeah.
I've been kind of returning to being a child again, and
Mm-hmm.
I paint, I draw, I go back to reading.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a lot of like hobbies with my friends. We go to painting classes. We're out playing pickleball, stuff like that, where you can just really disconnect. I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think social media usage is one. Getting rid of your phones, actually spending time to connect with your family without those phones. And yeah, finding stuff that just works for you and that's soothing to kind of, bring that system down and to be a little bit more calm. I totally agree with you there. But um, yeah, so that's I think the biggest point is finding what works for you, and this is what this
Mm-hmm.
whole journey is about in general. You know.
Absolutely. I really think the next step in healthcare and medical system as a whole really needs to be personalized. I think we're beyond kind of like, I mean, there's something sure, but I think we're really beyond blanket recommendations. We want to test, we want to see, we want to personalize, and we want to tailor it as much as
Yeah,
possible.
absolutely.
Do
Well,
you,
exercise is definitely one of them, and I think it's, we think about all these hacks, things that we can do to be healthier, but you're
Mhm.
right. If we go through the checklist, I feel like most people that I work with, I'm like, are you sleeping? Are you moving? Are you getting water? Are you doing
Mhm.
that one thing to de-stress? And usually maybe one of them they can tick off.
Yeah.
But movement is for sure one of the most important things that you can do every single day.
Mhm.
And I think a big misconception is people think it has to be like an hour of like really rigorous exercise every day. And I always just say, like, start small. What's one thing you can do today? Can you go on a walk?
Mhm.
Can you go on a daily walk? Can you do a quick 20-minute workout? So yeah, so I think especially when we're coming upon the holidays and everyone's schedules get super chaotic, like I don't know how I'm going to fit this in.
Mm-hmm.
My best advice is literally just set aside that 15 to 20-minute window, because it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be super intense. And I know that there's so much science behind this too, but I obviously am a strength coach. I'm a huge advocate of strength training for so many different reasons. We know it helps with your sleep, with your cholesterol, with your blood pressure, posture. There's lots of incredible studies coming out on all-cause mortality, cardiovascular mortality, cancer mortality. I actually have the craziest story of one of my best friends who is going through terminal cancer at the moment, who is doing nothing but lifestyle factors, 2 workouts a day, strength training, and being super good with his diet, and has decreased his tumors by 10%. It's fascinating. He's being like studied by cancer boards across the world. So I'll have to talk about that another time, because it's really incredible, but it's just the power of strength training.
Mm-hmm.
So can you speak a little bit more about what's actually happening when we are exercising and strength training on more of a biology level?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm such a fan of exercise, physical activity, and strength training, just like yourself. A lot of people say to me, what's the one thing I can do? And often I'll say, are you strength training? There's so many things to add that it can add into your life. You listed a whole bunch of them, but even other things like hormone balance, we see improve significantly, muscle mass. And we know that there's some simple studies out there that look at even just the muscle density in your thighs and correlate that directly with longevity. There's so many things that having more muscle mass can really do for your health, let alone all the other benefits of strength training. But in terms of stress itself, it's actually really interesting. If you look at the research, it's not 100% clear what exercise is doing for stress, but there's a number of factors that I think come into play. We definitely see improvements in some of those feel-good hormones I mentioned earlier that get depleted in stress: endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, those feel-good hormones that we release. And exercise definitely helps to increase those. So, people are familiar with the term runner's high, but that can happen with all exercise. A really interesting study, a couple of studies I was looking at for stress, is that regular exercise seems to improve resilience to stress on both a psychological and a physiological level. People that exercise regularly and are exposed to stress tend to have less of a heart rate response. So I know a lot of people are getting into tracking, and they ask me a lot about heart rate variability. And we actually see improvements in heart rate response to stress in people that exercise regularly. Now, that's just one component, but if the human body is a complex system, you can't do one thing. So if one thing's improving, the whole downstream effect is going to be beneficial. We also see that people that regularly exercise tend to have lower levels of adrenaline and cortisol, again, those stress hormones. And I think a big part of it is it's just a break from stress for a minute. It's a time to step away, as you mentioned, take that 15, 20 minutes, take a step away from the stress, turn off your phone, stop thinking about it. Even better, get out in nature, and just an overall improvement in quality of life. And people that rate their quality of life higher tend to be more resilient to stress as well. So I think that's a big part of it. There's obviously a lot more factors, but that's some top ones that I would typically think about when I think about stress and exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. And my recommendations, especially for strength training, is to try and get in at least 3 sessions of strength training a week. And then, yeah, fill in those other days of movement with whatever you love to do. Because we want to make it enjoyable. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult. And especially during the holiday seasons, I love getting out and doing stuff with my family, even if it's just going on a walk outside, which is really great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really tackling some of those misconceptions. There's a lot of misconceptions about exercise, right? It has to be difficult, it has to be complicated, it has to be all the things. So.
Well, I think that there's also just a lot of constant arguing online in the health field about what's better, what's this, but like until you can come to me and show me that you're at least doing the basics, let's not get into the minutia and get super crazy about all the details. We just need everyone moving more and focusing on the basics. And nutrition is another one of those.
Okay.
So, and that's a huge part especially during the holidays. And I don't know about you, but one of my biggest things I always work with my clients on is to not always think about what you need to take away, because that's stressful.
Yeah.
And that ends up leading more to failure. Like, what can we add into our diets that's going to make us feel better? And I was thinking about this a lot, especially with us working together for the majority of my life. And I'm sure so many women can relate. We constantly think about like, losing fat, losing weight, taking away things. And I think about when I was in that state, not only maybe I did lose weight, maybe I did lose fat, but I also lost muscle. I also lost energy. My hair was falling out. My skin was bad. So I was losing a lot. I wasn't gaining. So what are the things that like we can add into our nutrition that can help us gain that energy, gain the hair health, gain, you know, the muscle, the strength. So I think that that's a good thing for people to think about when you're going into the holidays. But what are some of those key foods that you think about that can really help with stress management and hormone management and balance?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is my favorite approach to nutrition. How do I add good things in? We're forever thinking, how do I take away all the things I want? The reality is, if you add in more good things, it crowds out the others, but that's not what we're focusing on. It's very psychologically different of what can I add in versus what can I take away. In terms of stress, and again, I think that nutrition is very personalized. I think it really takes some time to talk to someone and figure out their goals and how they're going to feel best. But I think if we're trying to think, what are some general things that have shown promise for stress? Big part that I see is adding in fiber and fruits and vegetables. There really isn't an upper limit for most people in terms of fruits and vegetables. So if you like them, you want to have more of them, there's definitely a lot of benefits for all of your health, but particularly for stress management. There's a strong connection between brain health and gut health and how we feel. So a lot of research is behind things like prebiotic fibers, fermented foods, probiotics. They can be nice to add in at times of stress. A lot of people feel stress in their stomach, the butterflies in your stomach, or just feeling nauseous or things. You get digestions all over the place when you're stressed out. So I think that's really important. Omega-3 fatty acids for inflammation, and making sure you're not going on the roller coaster, whether that is restricting and overeating at other times, whether you're, eating processed carbohydrates and your blood sugars are all over the place, getting real quality meals in as well. So slow digesting carbohydrates, foods that are high in magnesium. We didn't touch on supplementation. We definitely can if we have time, but foods high in magnesium are particularly helpful. Whole grains, legumes, avocados, nuts and seeds. And if we're going to touch a little bit on things that maybe shouldn't make the bulk of our diet, probably don't live off caffeine, alcohol, and processed foods over the holidays. At least try and get some good stuff in there as well.
So is there anything when I think about the holidays, I constantly think about everyone, not only their stress, but their stress eating. They've got a lot of family around, they got a lot to worry about. And I feel like everyone is stressed that they end up reaching for all the goodies, reaching for all the sugary stuff. And then they just spiral into a cycle of overeating, binging. What are some of the best ways that you help with your clients manage that? And like, what is actually happening? Like, why do we feel when we're stressed that need to go to food for comfort and then stress eat? And how do we combat that?
Absolutely. It has, honestly, it's been the flavor of this month, the amount of people that have talked to me about stress eating, and I'm so glad that they can chat about it and bring it up, because often it's a very like shy and personal thing. Like you don't really want to share that with someone. It's kind of, they might feel embarrassed or uncomfortable or just not know, oh, is there any point telling someone? But the big thing goes back to what I was saying before. Humans are at their core kind of simple, right? Seek pleasure, avoid pain. And our body knows that these highly palatable foods they do release dopamine and feel good hormones, much like other things like drugs and things that make us feel excessively good can also happen with food. So the key point that I always try to talk about if someone's struggling is trying to find a pleasurable activity to do at the time when you're typically turning to food. And for most people, that's after dinner. And it's usually not the foods that we should be choosing. No one really goes, oh, it's 1 a.m. Let me steam some broccoli, right? Typically, no. That might, that's up for a different conversation. But
that's another good part of it too, is what's happening when we are super tired and we're not sleeping well.
Oh yeah.
I know everyone can relate to when you're tired, you're reaching for those foods as well.
Yeah. It becomes a perfect storm, right? You're not sleeping properly, so your hunger and satiety hormones are out of whack. We know that a good night's sleep regulates those, so you're gonna feel more hungry. Most people know this feeling. If you've ever had to get up at 3 a.m. for a flight, that day you're typically starving. Like that's not uncommon. People are familiar with that one. So that can start happening every day if you're not sleeping properly. And then you are focused all day long with all of your energy and efforts into all the things that you have to get done that day. You might not be prioritizing good nutrition through the day, so you may actually be physically hungry as well. And then finally, it gets to that point when you can sit down, relax, and all of a sudden you're knee deep in the ice cream or the Oreos or whatever goodies is your food of choice, and it can be really challenging. So the first thing is trying to address those foundations, right? Make sure we're getting in all the good stuff, sleeping as well as possible, moving your body, eating nutritiously throughout the day. Don't try and live off coffee and then think that you're not going to overeat at night. It's a very hard thing to overcome. So try and get in your nutritious meals throughout the day, and try and find something fun after dinner, something that you look forward to. Maybe it's games with your friends, maybe it's watching your favorite TV show, something that doesn't relate to food, and that can often be a good kind of first step to start managing that.
I really am glad that you brought up what food can do to us and the process, because I think when we're talking about stress eating, a lot of people feel guilt and shame and feel like I'm wrong, I can't control myself, this is my fault. When in reality, if you're able to step outside of it and realize that those foods are actually causing that dopamine response, then that awareness can help you make better decisions. Like, if you eat this, it may make you feel this way, but you're not at fault. And it's not something to be ashamed of or to feel guilty of. So yeah, sorry, I got distracted by some of the questions, but yeah, so anyone here, I know there have been several questions that have been flying so far, but do you guys have any specific questions that you'd like us to answer? I know we probably have about 10 minutes left, and we want to be able to answer anything for you guys. So drop your questions below for sure. I know one of them was, any recommendations to minimize stress and shut your brain off, specifically before bed? What are some nighttime routines that you think work?
Gosh, isn't that a good question? I feel like I've been talking a lot. Do you want to get started?
Yeah,
about,
no worries. I mean, you're the expert here. Yeah. So, I mean, I keep going back to, and I know that there are so many incredible studies coming out about technology and the phone and blue lights, like even if you get blue light glasses to help, but shutting off and turning your phone off at least that 1 hour before bed. And I'm so guilty of it. If I'm can't go to sleep, I pull my phone out, and then I end up awake scrolling, even if it's just even if it's reading good stuff, but it can turn into like 3-4 hours, and then I'm not getting that good sleep. And I think it's also really important. There's so much science around that 10 to 2 window, and we're missing that like really important part of sleep. And then again, it just snowballs the next day with our appetite, with our mood and everything. So I actually think that your nighttime routine is much more important than your morning routine. I think everyone has different morning routines. I'm not doing a 12-step morning routine. I'm getting up, making coffee, cuddling with my puppy, and going to work. It works for me. But it's like, how are we shutting our brain off a little bit and at the end of the night? So I think that your technology, the phone, finding anything that will put you in that soothing state, whether it be a warm shower. You don't need to do cold showers. You could do warm showers. Warm showers, a candle, reading a book, like anything, to really bring yourself down. Another thing about the nervous system is, can your nervous system become more sensitive? Over time. I actually have a lot of friends that have had this issue with caffeine. So I used to be able to drink coffee daily, and now can't even drink 1 cup without feeling super jittery and anxious. And I see that a lot over time as people get older.
Yeah. Tolerance can definitely change over the time, and it's so multifactorial in what actually is causing it. But if someone is already feeling stressed, anxious, jittery, the last thing you want to do is add caffeine or any kind of stimulant on top of that. You're certainly headed in the wrong direction. So I think a lot of people, I feel really bad because I often ask, the 2 things that most people don't want to change is alcohol and caffeine or coffee. And so usually I'm like, okay, let's do everything else we can do first. But at some point, there has to be that level of personal insight. If it's truly affecting you, maybe it's time to find some better alternatives. And there's a lot of other great, beverages that people can replace with, some of the, something like turmeric or a decaffeinated tea, like herbal tea, that still has that same ritual behind it, but is not going to have that same effect on the nervous system.
Yeah, well, and also with the coffee, and going back to the sleep conversation, like limiting your caffeine. They say 2 p.m., but again, it's up to you depending on what your schedule is. But a lot of people, that can really disrupt your sleep. And I know we don't want to have the alcohol conversation, but that incredibly impacts your sleep. I think it's like Huberman that always talks about how it's true. Like, if you're going to have a beverage, maybe it's better to have it especially during the holidays, during the day. Because when you're drinking a lot at night, no matter what, even if you think you're getting good sleep, you're not getting good sleep. So that's a huge one, is to really focus. I mean, you know this, I've talked about this, like I basically quit drinking except for a rare occasion, and it has completely changed my life. I am so happy that I've done that. You know, I think it's just such a normal part of our society now. So I think that that's a big conversation that's going to keep, you know, circulating, and people are going to be keep talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think because a lot of people now, you know, the amount of people that come to LifeForce to chat with me and they're using Aura rings or Whoop or something to monitor their sleep. And a lot of people just did, gosh, is it sober October?
Yeah.
And they are saying, oh, my sleep got way better. And they were previously often people that are like, well, I need something to wind down at the end of the day. And it's a false sense of security because you'll often fall asleep better when you've been drinking, but the sleep quality is appalling. And so they stop drinking. And at first they think it's interfering with their sleep because they can't fall asleep. Or as I often joke with them, maybe pass out is a better term, but they're not sleeping quality. And then once they reduce or eliminate that alcohol, we see sleep quality improve immensely. And like you said, going back to the sleep routine, a good quality sleep is a really good place to start if you're looking for how to improve my health. Because if you're tired, you're not going to want to exercise. You're not going to want to prepare healthy food. You're not really want to be doing all the things that will benefit your health. So at least if you can wake up feeling well rested and energized, it's a good place to start.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. Does high intensity exercise, like interval training and stress, increase stress hormones and increase blood glucose as a result? Yes, it does. And I think that this is where it gets really confusing. And I see a lot of people wearing the glucose monitors, and then they get super stressed out when they're working out and their glucose goes up. That's a normal response. It doesn't mean it's a bad response. And I think, you know, you touched on this a little bit earlier. Just because something's stressful or inflammatory doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing in that moment. But what is really important is that you are doing those steps to recover properly after, which is the sleep, which is the nutrition, which is the hydration. I mean, I am such an advocate. If all my clients know this, if they have had a horrible night, did not sleep, I tell them to go, we're not going to work out. You know, like obviously there's different times when we can push through, but if you're constantly putting all this stress on your body and then you're not finding ways to regulate that and to recover, then that's where we get into issues, you know, but those are totally normal responses.
Yeah, I think you answered that perfectly. And I think that all comes down again to personal tailoring your exercise. That you just don't find someone else's routine and follow it blindly. Try and get something that's personalized to you. Listen to your body. If you're tired, there's no point pushing yourself further. There becomes a time where, you know, if you're tired every day, maybe it's time to see what else is addressing that. But I think you're totally correct. There's a balance between healthy stress that builds resilience, helps our body be as healthy as possible. And then there's stress that's starting to go down that detrimental pathway and it's just too much for your body.
There's definitely a point of diminishing returns, and that's what we have to focus on. Like if your life is just all stress and nothing, you're not, you know, getting sleep, the nutrition, you're mentally stressed out all the time. We need to find a balance there. We need to, then it may not be beneficial for you to go do an hour-long, incredibly intense workout. Maybe it's something more gentle.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Amazing. Well, I think that that's all of the questions. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Dr. Renee Thomas, you are such a breath of fresh air. You have given so much amazing information to all of us. You have helped me so much this past year. I literally cannot say enough good things about LifeForce and what you've done for me, which is also so exciting that right now, starting today, is when we do have the 54% off of the diagnostic. Literally, just run and check out, you guys, because this will be the best decision that you make for yourself this holiday season. So I think that's like what, $300 off?
It does work out to $300 off. That's crazy.
Yeah. And can you just remind them like what you get with the diagnostic?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you join up to LifeForce, you're going to get over 40 biomarkers tested. You can either walk into your local blood draw place, or you can schedule to have someone at home, which is my personal favorite. They come to the house as soon as I roll out of bed. It's basically no impact on my life. They're pretty much done before I realize I'm awake. So you can get your blood tested. And like I said, it is over 40 biomarkers. So it's a pretty intensive deep dive. Then you will be able to meet with your LifeForce physician. You'll be able to run through all all of those biomarkers, answer any questions that you have, talk about your symptoms, what you're looking for, and then we work to create a personalized and proactive plan for you. So that may be focusing on hormones, it might be focusing on cardiovascular risk, maybe it's more metabolic health, maybe you've got some real depletion in your critical nutrients. Figuring out what's going to help you thrive, we'll come up with a customized plan that involves your lifestyle. It might have some supplementation. We even do have some prescriptions if they are needed, but it's really just what does the individual need to thrive. Then every 3 months, we repeat that process. Full biomarker panel, another doctor's visit, check in, what's working, what's not, how are you feeling, what do we need to tweak? And the other part of LifeForce is in between those doctor's visits, you're going to be checking in with your health coach. They're going to be there for accountability, extra tips and tricks. They're going to be there to kind of hold your hand through the whole process and help put your plan that you come up with your doctor really into real life action. So that's really the core parts. And then members also get discounted nutraceuticals or supplements through LifeForce as well.
Incredible. I mean, it's what you get with LifeForce is amazing. The value's just, I've never seen anything like it before. So again, thank you guys. Reminder, starting today, it's 54% off. You can get $300 off. The link will be in the LifeForce's bio, and we'll have it in mine as well. So make sure to go check them out. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Ciara, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot from you. I hope everyone else has. I hope this has been really valuable at that time of year. Stress, I think, is a topic we really need to focus on. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. And everyone, I hope have a wonderful time of year.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everybody.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.